So, hello, Jennifer. Welcome to the Listen.Better podcast for March 2021. Jennifer Sproul, my guest today, has had a long 2 decades, I believe, in the membership world. Was at the Market Research Society for 13 years. So has an interesting blend of marketing, publishing, membership, and now finds herself as the chief exec at the Institute of Internal Communication, not communications.
That's right, it's communication. That's
Very
correct.
important. Very So what a year it's been. Here we are coming into, well, we're in lockdown 3 with the roadmap, the famous roadmap underway. What was your initial reaction when COVID kicked off back in March 2020?
I think kind of like a lot of people actually, a sort of disbelief that something of that, it was that serious, that it would have that longevity. I think at the beginning I sort of thought, okay, well, all right, we'll deal with this. This is surprising. I'm sure it'll be over in, a couple of months or so, and we'll just get back to the way we were doing things. So I think it was a real hard judgment to understand the real impact of it, and then actually how much change you needed to make. So it was very hard, I think, at that beginning to sort of go, well, do we change our whole business model because it might be over really quickly? Or do we actually think this is going to go on forever and we need to really look at things? I think there was definitely a certain amount of disbelief, and I think I felt quite, confused and probably overwhelmed as well at the beginning about making those right decisions and trying to guess the longevity and actually how much we needed to adapt what we were doing. I think that was certainly my initial feelings.
Yeah, confusion and overwhelmed is a very familiar sentiment I think I've picked up with others. So just paint a quick picture for me for the IOIC. What's the makeup of the team and the size of the membership?
Sure. So IOIC, we've been growing actually over the last couple of years, but in terms of the size of the team, the head office team, there's actually only 7 of us that run the entire operation, from when we used to go to the office, from buying the milk to doing the accounts and to administering all the activities that we do. And our membership has been growing over the years. So we're now looking around about 1,800 members, working those that are really in the purest internal comms roles, typically with organizations of sort of 1,000+ employees.
Okay, great stuff. So when the overwhelmed feeling started to subside, you thought, okay, we've just got to get on with this. Looking back, what worked well in terms of how you adapted, and perhaps what worked less well with hindsight?
Yeah, I think there was a lot that worked well. I mean, I'm quite a pragmatic person when things happen, sort of like you sit down, okay, well, that's the situation. And what do we do? So I think we were very good in the initial outbreak to kind of, because our membership were really in the throes of dealing with it. Their job was to communicate to employees of what this meant for them and how they had to work, how they had to set up remote working. So as that sort of the dawning realization, if you like, of the seriousness of the situation, we jumped in straight away to make sure we did advice, to make sure that we prepared all the things that we needed to do, from webinars to making sure we got to board directors just on a call to go, like, ask us any questions, what help do you need? Even though to some degree we were learning as we went, I think we were very quick off the mark to make sure we enabled supports, a coronavirus advice centre, shared information, best practice. We made ourselves available to give advice. We put on over 50 webinars from everything to help people deal with the practicalities of it. We made sure we were supporting those that were out of work. We tried to look at the breadth that was going on. So I think that worked really well, because like I say, our membership was sort of dealing with it in the moment as well. And they were very overwhelmed. So we were trying to take some of that pressure off and make sure that we could give them advice. So I think that worked really well, as well as move all of our activities to online, whether that was Zooms or calls or training and things like that. I think the things that didn't go so well, or the things that on reflection you could always do better, there's always room for improvement, I think was, organizations and membership bodies, you thrive off your volunteers. It's your volunteers that actually make the activity happen. And actually, probably what we could have done better was engaged with those earlier on to really give them the support to help support outwards. We did reach out, of course, but I think there was much more we could have done to support our volunteers, to help them support the membership. So that for me was probably the biggest reflection, is that we didn't realize how much they needed help as well as just trying to make sure we pumped out an awful lot of advice. So I think that's the thing I would definitely reflect on, that we could have done better at.
Yeah. So by volunteers, do you mean members, and
Yes.
then what they can then do to amplify your message and work?
Correct. So, you know, like many membership organizations, you have networks. You have your regional networks, you have your special interest groups, you have your newcomers groups, and the rows are all really run by volunteer committees, directors who have full-time jobs. So they're doing it on the side. They're giving their time free and generously, and because they passionately want to help and advance the profession that you're serving. But they were obviously under a lot of pressure in their day jobs. So to ask them to add on that pressure by going, could you do this, that, and the other, to support the membership, was a big ask. So perhaps we could have done more to reach out to them directly, to kind of go, well, how can we give you support? What materials can we give you? What can we do that you could share with your local communities? Because there's hubs and pockets that exist within those groups that perhaps we could have done better at reaching out to them to find out how we could make that easier for them, rather than just sort of, you know, put on whatever you can, you know, because it is a bit hard in those times. I think that's something I would certainly reflect on, because without volunteers, membership organisations wouldn't be able to do the volume activities that they do.
Sure, yeah. And were you able to gauge sentiment amongst members over that trajectory from March last year to here? I mean, I'm assuming you regularly take the pulse check or gauge views. What's the sort of, can you again paint a picture of how that curve has gone?
Yeah, so in terms of gauging views of members, I mean, I think there are lots of things we did to understand how COVID-19 impacted them. We did a lot of things, and we did a number of surveys, as you know, from the initial outset, to find out how we responded. Then we did a sort of piece of research at the end of last year to kind of go, what's changed? Because a lot has changed for our practitioners. A lot has changed for internal communicators. And we certainly knew at the beginning of the pandemic that the sentiment from them was that they were feeling incredibly overwhelmed, incredibly sort of responsible for their organizations, for their people, for their employees. And a lot of our members were feeling overworked. They were sort of, exhaustion was setting in. So I think we kind of really understood that, and we're trying to do more that we could to support them. I think as time has gone on, though, we've seen that, yes, we've got used to it. Okay, we understand it now. We actually have shown our value. But now what does this mean for the long term? And actually the good part of this for our members is that they've seen that their value in their organizations has increased. So for us, it's to make sure, well, we've got you through that kind of initial bit. So what do you need now to help you think about the long-term implications of this? So, and the conversations are ongoing. So it's actually having that reflection at the end of the year, sort of goes, well, okay, we're all here now. We've done a good job. We've got that. We feel proud, but exhausted. Now, IYC, can you help me as the membership body? Tell me, what does this mean for the long term? How are organizations going to change? How do I need to adapt my skills? How do I need to change? How do I improve? What they're looking for from an institute is to horizon scan and to make sense of those things. And I think we're certainly at that point now in the sentiment of members going, I now need that bit of help. So it's understanding where they're at to make sure that we're responding with the right kind of information and the right kind of support, to help them be good at their jobs and feel proud of what they do every day.
Very good. What about, could you give me 3 changes, and I'm really putting you on the spot by asking for 3, but some bullet points then of what's changed significantly for you? You mentioned there were changes at the beginning. What has changed for internal communicators?
I think a lot's changed. So I think the first thing I would say in terms of what's changed is the reliance on them from their leadership. You know, leaders were thrown out there kind of going, they had to suddenly become these human, empathetic, and make sure they had trust in their organizations, make sure that they were doing all these things. And suddenly they felt very exposed. They felt very vulnerable. So and they called up the internal comms team going, help me. And that was a call that they never used to really get that much. So that suddenly is a big change if you think as a professional, suddenly being thrown into those situations and being sought out and being asked and being involved and going from the doing to actually the advising capacity. So I think that was a really big change. I think the next change has been actually then how we practically do what we do. So there's had to be the get to grips with technology. How do we help our organizations and our people thrive in a very digital heavy world? How do we support the well-being? How do we create that kind of manifestation? And how do we create the right environment? So it's been very much a change around culture. and very much a change around tone, and very much a change of how we use technology as the enabler to do all of those things. So I think, yes, it's been strategic change in terms of being more there, changing how we do things. And then I think the third thing then that really is changing is, now we've got all this, now we understand all this, how do we make sure we drive that into the future? What is our priorities? And also last year, we talk a lot about the pandemic, but there was also, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, there was lots of things that changed. So it's really then changed a lot of the context of their organizations, not just how, but what, and the kind of feeling and the culture and the emotion and the empathy that we need to create in our organizations. And now how do we sustain that in whatever the new world is going to be?
The next normal. So it sounds like you've gone the extra mile, certainly, to really deliver value to members in this extraordinary year. So how do you dig deep and continue that motivation? What makes you just get up each day and think, okay, how can I continue to deliver benefit to members when we're not having those opportunities to meet in real life as we would have done in all those meetups and networking opportunities?
Yeah, it's definitely been hard to keep our own resilience, to keep our own motivation, particularly when you're looking at the same four walls every day. And I think what's been really hard for all of us in membership bodies and everything is to keep creative and to keep creative thinking in what we do and how we do it. I think we've learned a lot though, and I learn a lot from our membership, and I learn a lot from what they do, and listening is absolutely important. And what keeps me motivated is when sometimes you just need that one good conversation or that one nice email where a member or somebody says to you, you've really made me feel helped today. I feel looked after. I feel much more positive than I did the day before. So that when you get those small moments as a membership body, because that's what you're there to do, that's what motivates you to keep going. And I think that when we got to the end of last year, particularly from a head office team, as well as, the membership itself, there was a need to sort of step back and going, right, we just went at that. We did an awful lot, and that was great. But we need to sit down here and go, what went well, what didn't go well? And actually, we need to now really prioritize. So I think that as we go forward, we hope that there will be a return to face-to-face, and there'll be elements of that in the future, but we're trying to listen to our membership to understand in what capacity do you want that, because they won't want it the same as how they had it before. We'll all approach things a bit differently. But I think the main thing that we need to work on as an institute, and the one thing that keeps us relevant as an institute, is community. And it is allowing conversation, because a lot of our members are sometimes quite isolated, or they're in teams of one or two with an inordinate amount of responsibility. So for us, actually, it's how do we make sure we continue that community, continue that support, and enable daily conversation, rather than it's sort of being always talking at or telling at. So I think there's a need to make sure as we get together, and you can do all of that digitally, whether that's through Zooms or huddles or informal sessions. I think we need informality, not just formalness to the way we do things. But then also as well, online communities. So if you've got a problem, there's a place you can post that problem, and there's a community of people there that will help you respond to you. So I think the job going forward is for us to enable and facilitate that, and make sure that we have a program of face-to-face connection or digital connection that is sometimes formal, because there's some members that just need to know, how do I do this? And there's also just that point of allowing that informal conversation. And those are the moments actually where sometimes a lot of people get more out of it, because they feel like they've made a friend, or they feel like they've got someone that understands them, or they feel like they've had a problem shared as a problem halved. So I think that as we go forward, we need to make sure we build a lot of that structure and change in the way that we do things into our digital connections, as well as drive more community. And then when we get through that, it's then listening to our members going, well, when we can do face-to-face, what do you want? What do you want that to look like? And what do you want that to feel like? And I think that's going to be an ongoing challenge for all membership bodies to really tune into the needs of our membership.
I really like that idea of more informality through technology, because I think that's what's been lacking so much. The calls tend to be, we're meeting at this time to do this, get the action sorted, and then everyone's off again. And so those chance collisions that we used to have in office corridors and meeting rooms have just fallen by the wayside. So how to bring some of that back, I think that's really valid. So being more introspective now, how would you say your leadership style has evolved or changed, if at all, over the last year, if you were to be honest?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think as a leader, as someone, I've always been I'm a heart on the sleeve kind of person. I'm not I'm not corporate. I'm not particularly straight in sort of structured in that way. I'm kind of, this is my personality, and I've never been ashamed to show my personality and to have conversation and to joke and to laugh with my team. That doesn't mean I don't give direction and strategy and structure, but I've always been somebody that's quite sort of, I am me. I want to make this fun. I want to make this enjoyable. And I'm going to share, and I'm going to be really open. I'm very transparent in the way that I do things. And I think that having that background through a pandemic has been really helpful. I've always been somebody, how are you today? What's on your agenda today? I think, but there is always a need to reflect on our style, and that doesn't always work for everybody. And it's funny, I'm doing a lot of time with my team right now to kind of really, let's talk about how we're feeling. Let's understand each other better. Because we all have mixed personalities and mixed traits in a team. And I think the thing that I've learned is that even though I am an extrovert, I am someone that's out there and chatty, not everyone is. So I need to look at actually giving my team more structure, more planning, and more prioritization. So because they need that from your leadership as well. So for me, it's not necessarily my personal style that has perhaps changed, but it's more the way we come together and we have structure in our reflection. We have structure and kind of going, well, look, there's lots we could do. We are not shy of ambition, and I don't want to change any of that, but we can't do it all. So they need me to come in and go, well, let me tell you, these are the priorities that you're going to work on. And let's do that together. Let's understand each other better. Let's also look at how many Zooms, how much volume we're trying to do, so that I make sure that I'm looking after you and we still are delivering great forward thinking. So I think my style as a person hasn't necessarily changed, but I think my understanding of when you've had such an overwhelming time that you need to step in and take away some of that and listen to some of that and give a little bit more structure and a little bit more time for people to process and to think and understand that not everybody finds this new way of working easy. So how can we work around that?
It sounds like you've poured an enormous amount of energy, you along with your team, into making sure you deliver for members. So, and I take it there's going to be some positives that come out of this. It's sometimes nice to have a voice of hope. So what are the positives you'll probably take forward into 2021 and beyond?
There's lots of positives to take. And it's funny, and if you speak to my members and you speak to everyone that we're talking to, it's been a blessing and a curse. I think that the curse has been the stress, the overwhelming, the reaction, the processing, the mental resilience to it. But the blessings have been, yes, our membership are feeling proud and they're getting more recognition. And actually the profile of the membership that I represent is significantly increasing. So that is a great opportunity for us as a membership body to make sure that we are growing our membership, that we're doing more, that we're advocating for what our membership does. I think then the other blessing for us as a membership body is that, membership bodies, I mean, I've worked with them a long time, and IOIC is no different. You can become quite institutionalized. You can become quite, well, this is the way we've always done things. And we always do face-to-face, and we always are quite corporate, and we always have to have this kind of process. But picking up on that point about informality, you need to reflect on that going, well, we've got a blank piece of paper. Why do we always say that? Let's try and do things a little bit differently. So it's forced the hand. And that's no bad thing. We talked for years about doing more online training or digital things, or making our diplomas have more teaching, more elements, more support, more community. But we were sort of going, we still got all the face-to-face stuff to do, and that kind of works well, and everyone likes it. So there's no rush. But now we've had to. And actually, the reward from that has been amazing, let alone our international presence, just those little organic things that happen off the side. So I think we've certainly made ourselves a more 21st century organization. Do I think we have a long way to go to really be really good? Absolutely. But there is so much to learn from that. And I think there's so much we won't go back to. And there's so much more new things to come. But I think that, so the blessings for us have certainly been shaking up our business model, shaking up how we do things, becoming more digital, becoming more accessible, becoming more informal, as well as then making sure that our membership, and we can really be out there with a strength of voice and narrative about the value that we bring to organizations and to working lives. And that's a lot to do. But we need to keep managing that feeling of being overwhelmed and that feeling of reality versus ambition. Both can work side by side, but you have to manage those carefully, particularly when you're running small organizations.
Absolutely, the seesaw of those demands. Well, it sounds fantastic what you've been up to, and it sounds like it's never been a better time to be involved in internal communications. That elevation to being strategic advisors, the green light on enabling technology at a faster rate and accelerating that whole digital agenda a lot, and then technically how the employees then take that on board. So fantastic pivotal role for head of IC. So just to wrap up, it's been really interesting talking to you, Jennifer. What would you, what's coming up for the IOIC in 2021 in brief?
In brief. So again, managing those expectations. So we've identified 5 key areas for us this year. There's plenty more we can do, but we're going to stick with our 5. So it's going to be about volunteer engagement, working and enabling our volunteers, our groups, our special interests. Also looking at communities, making sure we launch an online community so we can enable that dialogue and that connection. Developing our membership accreditation so we start to really professionalize internal communication and champion that and make internal comms a career of choice and that people seek to have standards around. And then as well to make sure that we continue to drive really good content and have good content structure. So we're spending a lot of time looking at the key themes around that and how we deliver that. And then finally is also an important role for any institute to look at diversity and inclusion. And how we're actually driving a really diverse and inclusive profession. So that's very much top of our agenda to do as well this year.
That sounds like another whole podcast to talk about, but thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer. I really appreciate it, and best of luck with all those 5 initiatives plus many more I'm sure you're involved in. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.